It was joyous scenes at the Italian Grand Prix when Charles Leclerc took the checker flag in that Ferrari, sent the Tifosi wild in Ferrari's first win since 2010 at their home Grand Prix. It was amazing scenes, wasn't it, guys? I mean, that picture of Leclerc on the top step of the podium, holding the trophy out with just the sea of Tifosi going right from the start finish straight all the way down to turn one. It was such an incredible scene, and Ferrari and their fans were in joyous mode. Well, for one half of the grid anyway, because on the other half of the grid, on the other half of the garage, you had the other driver of Sebastian Vettel once again spinning in the wrong direction and questioning his F1 career, his F1 future, and his driving ability. So yes, obviously today we're going to be talking about Sebastian Vettel. Where does he go from it? What next for Sebastian Vettel? Where does he go from here? Because it just seems to be talking about the same thing, isn't it? We just seem to be going round in circles, no pun intended, about Sebastian Vettel, because it's just when are we going to be talking good about Vettel? When on earth can we go, Vettel has won the Grand Prix, what a good drive from him, no mistakes, no nothing. What next for the German? So if you have noticed already there, you can't see our faces on this week's episode, which is probably a good thing. So take it in while you can, because trust me, I know you don't want to see mine and Lyle's ugly faces. But unfortunately, Lyle can't be with us this week. But I do have some very special guests with us today. They are the guys from Late Break, and 2 out of 3. I have unfortunately we don't have Harry with us today, but we do have Ben. And we do have Sam from Late Breaking. Thank you very much for coming on, guys. How are you feeling? Are you guys okay?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Thank you so much for having us on the show. It means a lot, and we'll take any opportunity we can get to talk some rubbish about F1. So yeah,
I'm generally amazed that someone else has allowed me to come onto their show. I'm usually a bit of a mess maker. So to all those out there listening, thank you for bearing with me. We appreciate it, and we're excited to be on here. And hopefully you can check us both out and help us both to grow going forward.
Yes, links to their YouTube channel and everything, their podcast will be in the description below. Go and check them guys out as well, the guys at Late Breaking. So guys, Sebastian Vettel, it's not a good season, isn't it? I mean, it looks like it's going to be another winless year for Sebastian Vettel, which will be his third in his career. Well, I could say fourth if you count his first season back in 2007 when he was briefly in, but realistically, he won in 2008, had a good year in 2009, didn't he? So really 3 winless years, it looks like it's going to be in the second with Ferrari. Where are your minds at with Sebastian Vettel right now? Do you think he can claw something back and actually win a Grand Prix between now and the end of the season, or even at some point next season? Or do you think, no, he's done, he's finished, that's it, that was the last straw?
Well, I would say it's been a tough season for Sebastian Vettel, and obviously that win at the Italian Grand Prix for Charles Leclerc is going to stick in the minds of the Ferrari fans all around the globe, including the ones that were at the circuit. No doubt that they are passionate fans. There would have been fans there who have been at every single Grand Prix since 2010 when they last got the victory there, obviously. And Charles Leclerc was able to do something in his first year at Ferrari that Sebastian Vettel has not been able to do for, 5 now. So that's going to mean something. And even if Sebastian Vettel, between now and this point next year, wins, say, 4 or 5 Grand Prix, it's going to be this one that sticks in the minds and the memories of the Ferrari fans. In 10 years' time, people will dredge up this Grand Prix victory and not one that Sebastian Vettel wins, say, at the end of this year. Do I think there's a chance he wins a race between now and the end of the year? I think it's dependent on the car. We do know, obviously, that top speed is not an issue for Ferrari, but their chassis is. And we now go into a string of races where it's not going to benefit the car. Spa and Monza was fine with the high-power circuits that they are, but Singapore's coming up. They should struggle there. Mexico, you've got a twisty middle sector. USA, tough first sector. So you look at these where they're losing so much time to Mercedes and Red Bull, and completely irrelevant of Vettel's talents and his form. I don't know if the car's going to be good enough for him.
Yeah.
At least in the short term, I think Vettel, he is a measured guy. I think he doesn't come out of too many weekends with high or low emotions, and he's even keeled in that respect, which is a good way to be. And I don't think the loss is going to affect him too much from the Italian Grand Prix. It was a disastrous weekend, but he's got better as the years have gone on, and he's got more experience that he can deal with those in a better way. And he has to remember there is still a very marginal gap between him and Charles Leclerc. He has been leading Charles Leclerc for most of this year, and it's only recently been switched around. So, of course, Leclerc does have the 2 wins against Vettel's none. But the consistency, I think, on a race day, qualifying, Leclerc's got the advantage. On a Sunday, I would still give a minor edge to Vettel. So he needs to not blow this race out of proportion. Remember that there's still a number of Grand Prix to go, and really re-establish himself as the #1 driver by, first and foremost, beating Leclerc this year.
Yeah, Ben, I completely agree with you. And I mean, that's the first thing that I would take away from this season so far is Vettel's consistency. We know as a champion, and remember that, a 4-time world champion at that, he is a man that is calm, he's composed, he's such a mature man out of the car and in the car. We saw a very rare mistake from him in Monza that was so dangerous. I mean, usually if he does have an accident, it's silly spinning somewhere. This really could have been a fatal accident, should it have gone wrong, in the wrong moment. Now, Ben, you mentioned there that Leclerc has been behind Vettel for the whole season, essentially. And Leclerc is now only in front of Vettel after winning the last 2 races, and Vettel wasn't on the second spot for either of those races. He didn't score any points in Monza, pretty much, like right at the end of the dregs there, he's right in front of Russell. That tells you a lot. If Leclerc is, only 10 points clear of him now? I think that tells you that Vettel, in a car that is struggling, is still able to compete with this young, raw pace. He's still able to keep up with Verstappen, who isn't, again, too far in front of him. I think only about another 10 or 12 points in front again. And Verstappen has 2 race wins to his name this season. Vettel is a man that you should never count out of the situation. He's a 4-time world champion for that exact reason. Yes, the Ferrari fans will drag up this fantastic... got a long way to go. And I think even if people start rooming around him being the #1 driver at Ferrari, you have to remember the experience, the level-headedness that Vettel has. Even if he is not giving you wins, he's doing what Hamilton does when Hamilton has a opponent. It's awfully wrong for him. The track just simply doesn't suit his car, like it hasn't done previously in the season. I count Sebastian Vettel out, and I also can't really see him going anywhere. I'd be shocked if next season we have another new driver in Ferrari.
Yeah, just to touch on that as well, because I know that everyone's saying Sebastian Vettel leaving at the end of the season because of his of how, let's say, underperforming he could be doing. I mean, what you touched on there, that this is the first time that Leclerc's actually overtaken Sebastian Vettel, which just, it's kind of like showing that maybe the season isn't going as badly for Vettel as it actually seems. It's just that he hasn't got a victory. Maybe people need to look beyond the victories. It's almost like in football, all right, let's say, for example, your team lost 1-0, but you were the better team. You had the more passes. You had the more, what's it called? I forgot the term of it. Possession, that's the one. But you performed well on that day, but ultimately you lost just because, it was just one of them days. And sometimes Sebastian Vettel can be like that. And yeah, I think that there is time to claw that back. I think there is time to save his season. And at the end of the day, only Vettel can do that, can't he? It's not like he's going to rely on Leclerc to do that, or anybody else for that matter. At the end of the day, the book stops with Sebastian Vettel. It's only up to him, and he's got the speed to do it. And I think, to be fair, I don't think he can win a race from now to the end of the season. I mean, it's not impossible, of course, but there's tracks where I'm just thinking I'm not too sure where he can win. I mean, he won in Singapore in the past, but as like you said before, the chassis is terrible. It's awful, isn't it? So I think you could really rule Singapore out. But I mean, to be fair, look at what happened in 2017. We all thought Hamilton was never going to win the Grand Prix because the Mercedes was terrible. Well, not terrible, but it was underperforming at the likes of Singapore. And then look what happened in Turn 1. So anything could happen in Formula 1. It's one of them things. But I think retiring or leaving Ferrari, it's for next season anyway, I think it's a bit absurd. I think it's a bit ridiculous that people actually do make those claims, because it's really in set in stone that he is going to be there next season. Just even if he has another shocking, there's 7 races left, I think he is going to be there. And I think Vettel will look back on this year and go and could have done this, I should have done that. Like he has done the past 2 years. The the second half of the season, rather, because the first half of 17 and 18, he was solid, absolutely brilliant. And we were all thinking, here's Ferrari back. Here we go. Vettel is back at Ferrari. But then come the second half of the season, it all goes wrong, doesn't it? And Hamilton and Mercedes take over, and then everyone's like, ugh, we want that battle with Hamilton and Vettel so badly. Why isn't it happening? So we're left screaming. And this year we haven't even got it at all. But beyond 2021, do you think Vettel will stay in Formula One despite what he's going through? Save it out for a couple of years at Ferrari, or do you think after 2020, that's it, game over for Vettel? He will retire from Formula One.
I think he has a number of options, and I'm honestly at this point unsure what he's going to take. I think if we first of all look at it within the context of Ferrari, will he be at Ferrari from 2021 onwards? Leclerc is the youngest driver that Ferrari have got in the last 50 years. There is no reason for them to make that judgment call unless they are investing in him as their future. They took a punt. Previously, Ferrari have only gone for guys who are either championship winners or championship contenders. They took a guy out of Alfa Romeo who had been in Formula One for a season and took a chance on him. So they are invested in this guy. And as Leclerc gets better and better and he gets more experienced, his role is going to transition. And if Vettel wants to stay at Ferrari, he will need to transition as well. He will need to adapt. Otherwise, it is not going to work. I don't think the way in which they work together, I don't think it's going to happen. If you get Leclerc making himself into a number one driver, because he's only going to get better. If you look at this season, Leclerc has generally been stronger than Vettel at circuits where he has experience in F2 and in F3. And in circuits where he doesn't have that lower Formula E experience, it's actually been Vettel that's been the stronger driver. But as time goes on, as he goes into next season, when he's 3 years of experience at some circuits, that's going to disappear. And Leclerc, as he gets more experienced, he will get better and better. Vettel, many would argue, is already past his peak, but at the very least, he is at his peak. He's not going to get any better from here. So if Leclerc is going to transition into that number one driver, if he is going to transition himself from the future of Ferrari into the present of Ferrari, Vettel is going to have to transition with that. At the moment, the issue with Vettel is not necessarily underperforming. It's underperforming compared to how much he's getting paid. Because he is not getting paid however much it is per year. He's second only to Hamilton in that respect. He's not getting paid that huge amount of money to finish 5th place in the championship. You can look at Hamilton and say he's getting paid a huge amount of money, but he's worth every penny because he's getting the job done that they are giving him the bucks to do. Vettel, on the other hand, he is not getting paid whatever it is, 30, 40 million a year to finish 5th or lose to his teammates. I think that in the future, if he wants to stay at Ferrari at least, he will need to transition into something of a Kimi Raikkonen role of the last few years, whether that's as a number 2 driver, whether that's as a mentor to Leclerc and someone who Leclerc can look up to. And I think he will have to take a pay cut. I don't think Ferrari will be able to, in the future, actually say to themselves, okay, we can afford this guy to keep making mistakes at this amount of money. And of course, at that point, it's Vettel's choice. Does he want to transition into that kind of role to stay at Ferrari? Or does he want to move elsewhere to continue being a number one driver? Because there are plenty of teams on the grid that would want him in that role. There are plenty of teams on the grid that are crying out for a 4-time world champion. So he will never be out of options. But I think if he stays at Ferrari, I don't think it can be in its current capacity and its current relationship with Leclerc.
I mean, unless Vettel is forced out of Formula One, and we need to admit one thing, Vettel loves racing, regardless of where it is. He loves race cars. He loves racing. He is an F1 purist. He loves how cars used to feel. And I think that the regulations coming in F1 in 2021 might actually suit Vettel a lot more. The chassis is going to be more balanced across the field. That could help him out in the long run. And another key point is I don't know who would take his spot right now. Yes, we've got development drivers coming through, but if you look across the current grid, to me, there isn't an obvious choice. Maybe Ricciardo a couple of years ago was maybe the next best thing that they could have had. But unless they want to spend huge money on someone like Max Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc at that point is going to be saying, no, I don't want Max Verstappen to be my teammate, then I don't know who they put in there. Also, I think the Italian Grand Prix is really giving a slightly skewed approach to Vettel. Yes, the incident he had was almost horribly awful that could have gone wrong. But you need to remember that before the summer break, Vettel had 6 podiums to Leclerc's 4. On tracks that are much harder to drive around for the Ferrari car than most of the other top teams. So he's outperforming his much younger teammate across the season, apart from these 2 wins, which have both come at the cost of his own strategy and then his own mistake. They did sacrifice him in the Belgian Grand Prix to give Charles Leclerc that edge at the front. And arguably, Vettel was the reason why Leclerc won that race. If Vettel wasn't there, Hamilton would have caught Leclerc many laps earlier and would have had a wheel-to-wheel fight. So we don't know if that would have been the case. So Vettel arguably was a key part in winning that race for Leclerc. I don't think Vettel goes anywhere within the next 2 to 3 years. He loves Ferrari. He absolutely loves racing. And until the likes of, I don't know, Schumacher turns up and from the bolt out the blue and is incredible, which I don't know if he's going to be at this rate, unless they spend a huge money bringing another driver from outside, I really can't see Vettel being replaced by anyone because there's no one good enough on the field at the moment, other than the likes of Max Verstappen, who isn't going to leave unless it is for ground-breaking, record-changing fees that I just don't think Ferrari are going to be willing to spend to upset their soon-to-be number 1 driver, Charles Leclerc.
Very true. At this present time, though, do you think that Sebastian Vettel is still the number 1 driver at Ferrari? And if he is, or if he isn't, do you think it will be next season?
I'd say that there actually isn't a number 1 driver at this point in time. I think we have seen times where Vettel has been favoured, particularly towards the beginning of the year. And I think if you were asking this question, say, in Australia or Bahrain, you'd probably say, yeah, at this moment in time, Vettel is the number 1 driver. But thanks to Leclerc sticking with Vettel, and you could argue maybe Vettel has been slightly better, you could argue the opposite, but they've been close enough that Leclerc has warranted equal status, if not number 1 status. And I think at this point, without a championship in the question, I think Ferrari will just favour whichever driver is in the better position within the race. If Leclerc is quicker than Vettel, who's ahead, I think they will tell Vettel to let him through, just like they did in Belgium. If it was the other way around, I have no doubt that the circumstances would have been the same and they would have let Vettel through. You could argue that Vettel this season needs to beat Leclerc in order to hold on to that kind of equal status, because if Leclerc can beat Vettel in his first season within the team, that's a massive statement. Even if it's only marginal, that's a massive statement. And as I said before, Leclerc's only going to get better and Vettel is only going to get either worse or not go anywhere. He's not going to improve at this point in his career. So the deficit that Leclerc has to Vettel now, if you think there is one, is as big as it will ever be. It'll only shrink. So, I think I think Vettel needs to beat Leclerc this season, in which case it continues to be a discussion. If Leclerc beats Vettel this season, though, like I said, Leclerc is their future, and there's no reason to think that future isn't now if he can already beat Vettel.
I think that Vettel makes a comeback. I think the tracks later on in the season suit his driver ability, and it's odd for Ferrari. We always need to look at this as a bit of a new dawn. Usually in Ferrari, there has always been one key driver and an assistant driver. We've had Alonso and Massa, we had Schumacher and Barrichello, and then more recently we have Vettel and Raikkonen. There was always the key number 1 and the secondary driver who would also be the sacrificial lamb, the wingman. It is now, as Ben said, relatively a level playing field. Very rarely has the number 1 driver, as seen by the start of the season by everyone around, dropped below the supposing number 2 driver. They are equally matched, but I do think that the calendar coming up suits Vettel. He's got so much experience around these tracks coming up. They don't feature as much in the F2 calendar, as it is now known. So I actually think that Leclerc might struggle. He's got that wicked qualifying pace, which I think is always going to help him. But I just think Vettel is a calm head. Strategically, he's strong. He knows how to play the field. And he keeps himself out of trouble. Where we've seen Leclerc, alongside Max Verstappen, get into a lot of rough and tumble along the grid. And I reckon that can end up leading to a DNF or 2 for Leclerc going forward. And I think that might just be the difference. So I think Vettel hangs on to it just in terms of if we had to give one person first driver status. But I wouldn't be shocked if we go into Australia next year, Leclerc comes out all guns firing, and immediately Vettel becomes the mentor, but the number 2, so to speak. So for now, Vettel for me just in front, but I do think it's going to be incredibly close towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it will be as well, to be fair. I think we've seen at times, like at the start of the season, when I heard the when Leclerc was like, kind of announced when the cars were rolled out with testing, like, okay, here's Leclerc in the Ferrari. And they kind of said that, okay, we're going to really prioritize Vettel in a 50-50 situation, which Leclerc kind of stood back and went, all right, that's fair enough. And then immediately I was like, right, okay, this is going to be no multi-21 Mark Webber, Sebastian Vettel kind of thing. It's like, right, okay, Leclerc understands his position within the team. And then we're seeing the pace and testing now. I was getting quite excited to go, right, Leclerc is a quick driver. He is a good driver, but how good is he going to be in the big team? Vettel has had 2 good years previously. I know he slipped off the pace at the end of the year, but that car was good. And it's like you say, Vettel's he is a good driver. And I was really, really looking forward to see what Leclerc could do. But at the same time, I was like, I just hope that if Leclerc is ahead, that they don't screw up his race to favour Sebastian Vettel, because they almost did that in Bahrain, if you remember, when I think Leclerc came out the pit, he was behind Vettel, and I think they told him to hold position, and then Leclerc kind of ignored team orders, and then I was like, oh wait, no, this is Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber all over again, isn't it? And obviously Leclerc unfortunately didn't go on to win the Grand Prix, and then I think that was kind of the moment where it was like, right, okay, so Leclerc isn't the kind of the pushover that we all thought he was going to be. And Vettel, almost like the faith that I had at the start of the year, because the last time Vettel had a teammate younger than him was Daniel Ricciardo, and then look what happened to that. Daniel Ricciardo came into his first season, and at the time, I think it was more of a shock that Ricciardo actually did beat Vettel, because Vettel was coming off the back of 4 world championships. I know that the car was bad that year. It was really poor, but Ricciardo got 3 wins out of that car and Vettel didn't, and that was a real big shock. And I was just like, will Vettel allow history to repeat itself? I don't think so. And in a way, it almost has. That the fact that that Leclerc's won 2 races and Vettel hasn't won any. He could have won in Canada, but that's a totally different story altogether. But just bring away from Sebastian Vettel for a bit, because I think we're talking about him too much. I think Charles Leclerc, he's got a really good future ahead of him, hasn't he? He's really, really quick. He's got a lot of prospect, and it's like you said, that Ferrari don't really go with young guns, but they do have, Ferrari have belief in the team, within Charles Leclerc, that he can be the next big thing in Formula One, and for Ferrari to go on to win multiple championships. So Ferrari will be investing in him. But do you think at this moment in time that Charles Leclerc can become world champion with Ferrari, or do you think Ferrari could produce or give him a championship winning car? Because Ferrari, as recently haven't. I mean, strategy wise, some races they've called it bang on. They've got the strategy right, called in the driver at the right time. Other times they haven't, and it's a bit of like inconsistency. Whereas unlike the Mercedes, it's only once in a blue moon that they do get a strategy wrong. So do you think that Charles Leclerc is in the right team to go on to win a championship? But if you guys say no and he won't win a championship at Ferrari, where would he go to do so?
I think there is every chance that he does win a championship at Ferrari. And you just have to look at the last 2 seasons. Of course, this year Ferrari have struggled, but I think that comes down to just going in the wrong direction with car development. I think Ferrari were doomed from race 1. They decided to go towards top speed. They decided to go towards focusing on that engine and eliminating drag and not focusing as much on downforce. And that was a big boo-boo on their part. They should not have gone down that path. And it's crippled them for the entire year. But we have seen in the last 2 seasons, 2017 and 2018, that Ferrari have been able to produce a car which is at least competitive with Mercedes. Vettel wasn't quite able to finish the job. You could argue that was down to his own personal faults. You could argue that the car still wasn't quite good enough. But there is at least a case to say if Leclerc had a car that was as good as the Ferrari last year, he would be in that championship hunt. And I think he is in a good position. Mercedes's advantage of the early hybrid era has whittled away. The engine power of Ferrari is looking good for the future. So if they can sort out their chassis issues, they should theoretically be in a position where they can give Leclerc a championship winning car. I think maybe the biggest obstacle is 2021, and if they do enforce some sort of cost cap, because at that point, I really think that Red Bull and Mercedes, to a degree, use their money a lot more wisely than Ferrari do, and I think they are slightly more efficient in terms of their team. So I would be concerned a little bit for 2021 and how much that changes the dynamic of the sport in general. If so, then maybe Leclerc falls out of favour slightly. But at least for 2020, if they can get their development right, if they can at least push that in the right direction so that they're not out of proceedings early on, I think Leclerc can win a championship for Ferrari. They've been successful for so many years that you can't discount them. He's ultra talented. I think he's got a really great mixture of he's wise beyond his years, and he has that level of controlled aggression that you need to be as a race-winning driver. We saw that in Italy. We've seen that in the likes of Belgium. We've seen where he is quite capable of making some great overtakes, but he is also capable of holding on to a race lead when the pressure is at its highest, and that really bodes well for the future.
Yeah, completely agree. And I have to echo entirely what you say about Charles Leclerc's talents. He is such a level-headed, raw talent in the sport. He's almost a bit like what we saw from Lewis Hamilton when he first entered McLaren against Alonso. You know, you're going up against a world champion at that point. You're racing against other world champions on the grid. And Hamilton, like Leclerc is doing now, held their own. They really showed why they should be in that best car. For me, it's not Leclerc that's the issue. Leclerc will win a world title, whether that's at Ferrari or not. It is Ferrari that's the issue. And I almost feel that they need to go 2020... We either need to throw the world at 2020 and take the one last hurrah of the hybrid era that we have as it is currently, or we go, you know what, leave this era, we'll finish in third place next season, and we will give all the money, all the time, all the talent into developing the Ultra 2021 car and doing what Mercedes did at the start of this current era, and they could dominate for 2-3 years before others catch up to them if they just sacrifice a year. If they say to Leclerc and Vettel, you know what, you have a good car, but it isn't going to be a race-winning car next season. But the season after, we are going to nail everything. All money, all funds, all resources we have going into that car. That is the only way I think that Ferrari now can go out and win a championship, is if they commit everything they have to those new regulations and getting the jump on Red Bull, who are absolute masterminds at developing a chassis, and Mercedes, who just understand every working part of a track, of an engine, of a car itself. You know, obviously it helps that they have their own power unit, Mercedes. That's the advantage that they have over Red Bull. But those two are both brilliant machines at making race cars. I think Ferrari have slipped off that pace recently, and I don't think they know where to develop. They need to step away, develop all areas of the car by giving it full attention and not going, let's develop from Brazil onwards and try and get them next time out. I just don't think it's going to happen. It's the same for Williams. I think Williams need to go, screw 2020, we'll come back for 2021. And I think Ferrari is doing it. I think that's how Leclerc wins a championship for Ferrari. In terms of winning championships, he will get one. It's just whether he makes the right moves in his career further on to allow himself to be in that race-winning car. Because, make no doubt, you do have to pretty much be in the best car to win a championship. As much as people love to go on about how Hamilton isn't one of the greatest because he's only been in race-winning cars for his whole career. Part of being one of the greatest is understanding where to go in your career before almost it changes on its own without you having a say in it. Alonso failed at that. He never did well after Renault for the sole reason that he didn't know where to go after his career, and the teams fell out with him. Charles Leclerc needs to know how to do that, and that's what's going to make him a world champion. Not Ferrari. It'll be his decisions going forward. So, yeah, Ferrari can do it, but they've got to commit a lot to it.
2021 is going to be a big year. I think Ferrari should really focus on 2021 because they should know, well, what Mercedes did all the way back, in 2012, 2013 when they were planning for these rules. Ferrari should be really looking at 2021, and then they'll be going, right, okay, this era wasn't really ours. We tried, we failed, it didn't really work. Let's go with it again. And Vettel, hopefully, will be looking at that, going, I'm excited by that. And then Leclerc himself will be going, right, I'm in a really good position here to go on to win a championship. But yeah, I think Leclerc has definitely got the speed and the talent to go on to win a world championship. I've been a big fan of his since the first seen him. I went to the British Grand Prix in 2016, and then I heard of this young kid driving. I think he was driving the Haas at the time, and I was like, "Who is this Leclerc? Who is he? Who is he?" Really bad. I was like Leclerc, and then I was like, oh no, it's Leclerc. Like, oh right, okay. And then I followed him well, not literally, but of course. But like I've followed his career all the way through into F2, and I'm a really big fan of his, and I'm also a fan of Max Verstappen as well. On a random note, and I think those two certainly are the future of Formula One. And I think, and I just hope one day that they aren't teammates. I just hope that Leclerc is with Ferrari, and I hope that Verstappen is with Red Bull, possibly Mercedes. And I hope that that those two will be like a good rivalry in the World Championship, because I think a lot of us were hoping for a Hamilton-Vettel kind of championship battle when they first burst onto the scene. You know, Hamilton being this young fast kid that beat two-time world champion Fernando Alonso, and Sebastian Vettel was like, you know, supposed to be like the next Schumacher in a way. He was really quick, did things at Red Bull, unbelievable. Went to Ferrari, it hasn't really worked as he hoped out. I think a lot of people were like, we'll give him a chance, give him a couple of years to settle in, learn, to understand what he wants. Then hopefully he'll do what Schumacher did and go off. And obviously it hasn't really worked out like that. And I think Vettel will be kicking himself as well. And I think Leclerc might look at that and go, right, I don't want to make the same mistakes that, as you say, Alonso did. I wouldn't say Vettel did, but I think Vettel's just been quite unlucky in a way. Like Alonso, as like you said, did make the wrong, went you know, to the wrong place at the wrong time. Leclerc needs to know, right, okay, I do have every confidence in Ferrari that they can give me a World Championship winning car. Because to be fair, I can't really see Leclerc anywhere else. I think Mercedes have got like George Russell in the pipeline. Who else? I probably could say Max Verstappen. I've got a theory that he might go there. So, you know, I think Leclerc can't really go anywhere else unless someone else comes into the sport and then just buys everything. I mean, Racing Point at a stage, I think they've got a lot of money, but again, it's too early. It's too early to call. So yeah, obviously a lot of exciting things coming in Formula in F1 in 2021. Just moving swiftly on from Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, because it feels like I've been talking about them for ages, and I'm getting sick of them. If I'm honest, now I'm only kidding. There's been rumours this week that the track at Imola could be returning to the Formula One calendar. Now the F1 calendar has been a lot of talk in the past couple of weeks, hasn't it? With 22 races being announced next year, that the fact that there's been loads, like, you know, there's loads of races being added on, and we're going into locations where you're thinking, is it really necessary? Like, Vietnam is a big one. It's like, do we really need to go there? And a lot of people have been calling for classic tracks to come back. For example, the big one is Malaysia. Everyone's been screaming for that to come back. It was like no one ever asked for it to leave. So why is it gone? I think Turkey is another one, and one of them was Imola, and that's rumored to be returning to the Formula One calendar. Now, it is a classic track. It also has its fair share of tragedy, of course, on that tragic weekend in 1994. So guys, I just wanted to ask you as well two things. One, do you want Imola to return to the Formula One circuit? And two, if you could choose one track right now that's been in Formula One in the past, from 1950 all the way till, you know, 2018, let's say, what track would it be that you would want to see back on the F1 calendar, and why?
Okay, so Imola, I love Imola, always have done. And I think one of the criticisms that Imola sometimes gets is that it's difficult to overtake. I'm someone who believes that a race that contains a huge amount of overtakes doesn't necessarily make it brilliant. And I think a race which doesn't have many overtakes at all can be brilliant. I think it's much more about the close racing, and it's much more about the tension that can be created from having one car right behind another car. Maybe they're not able to get past. And we have seen some fantastic wheel-to-wheel battles at Imola where you've got a real cat-and-mouse scenario. Alonso, Schumacher, it springs to mind. But we've seen plenty of them over the years. It's a narrow circuit. And I guess that really brings on to the one concern I have, and the one reason I actually don't want it to return as much as I love it. It's a really narrow circuit, and I don't think it would work with the current conditions that F1 is working in. Yes, F1 is getting better at circuits, and it's getting better in terms of being able to overtake cars. But I feel as if Imola is just too narrow for it to work with the current spec of F1. Obviously, we don't know what's quite going to happen in 2021, but these cars are big, they are wide. And I think you would see a processional race similar to what we get in Catalonia, which we complain about every year. And I can't bear to see that as someone who loves Imola so much. So yeah, in that respect, I I don't actually want it to return, which it sounds weird me saying that because I like it so much, but I just feel as if it would ruin the real history that it has there. I actually don't think it will come back anyway. Of course, we do know that the F1 calendar is fairly packed as it is. It feels like they're going pretty much everywhere now. And they do have a race already in Italy. Of course, they did have two at one point. But if you can notice a pattern of where F1 is trying to go and the markets in which they are trying to really take advantage of. The reason they're going to Vietnam, obviously, it's not due to the great racing pedigree of the country. The reason they're going there is because they see it as a market that they can take advantage of in the future. Same thing when they went to Abu Dhabi for the first time. Same thing with Singapore, Russia. It's why they're trying to get a second race in the USA. They're taking advantage of Verstappen mania by going to Zandvoort. All of their decisions to go to new circuits are commercially are to do with the commercial side as well as the will it provide great racing. And I just don't think another race in Italy will do enough for the big guns at F1 to say, yeah, we should definitely return there. The second part of the question, which circuit would I love to see return? There are a number that I have. Narrowing it down to just one is very difficult. I'll say the Nürburgring. I love the Nürburgring. And I think you'd get a good race there. I'd like to see it return in a similar way to what they did have once with Hockenheim. Of course, Hockenheim is struggling to remain on the F1 calendar year on year.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it reinstated that it is a kind of a biannual event at the Nürburgring, then the Hockenheim ring, and then just basically switching and alternating between the two. It's a circuit that has so much history. There are some iconic corners around the circuit. You've got Hockenheim, you've seen the attendance figures rise year on year. I think there was a photo maybe last year where you looked at the grandstands in 2018 and it was a completely different picture to what we saw in 2014 or some year around there. I can't remember which one exactly. Vettel is still around. He'll bring people in. And of course, Verstappen fans are traveling to Hungary as it is. I'm sure they will quite happily travel to the Nürburgring. So I think you'd get a big crowd. You get some great entertainment. There are so many others that I'd like to mention as well, but I will accept that the question is only one. So I'm Nürburgring.
That's annoying. Before jumping about Imola, I will now no longer pick Nürburgring, but the Nürburgring was definitely my top 3 of suggestions because I think with the 2021 regulations, the track could be fantastic for Formula 1. Imola, I'm exactly the same wavelength as you, Ben. The cars currently are incredibly wide. I saw a wonderful comparison between Hamilton's McLaren in his first season and his current Mercedes, and it's almost double the size in both dimensions, both width and length. And you're right, the overtaking there is tough. It doesn't have the correct features of a racetrack currently to promote overtaking. There's not a massive straight. The largest straight is also curved, so that's difficult for aerodynamic ability. It's tough for following. DRS is tough to be opened there, and that is the key way for overtaking. You're right, Ben. You don't need to have a load of overtaking for it to be a fun race to build tension, but I think you do need some overtaking. You do need the ability to, at least if a driver wants to go for it, they have the chance to go for it. But Imola is a track that I could see coming back maybe in 5-6 years once we've really nailed down the ability to follow in Formula 1. But there are many tracks that could leave. I mean, there are some awful tracks on the circuit, Abu Dhabi being one of them, Catalonia being another one, that are just there for Catalonia being a test track, Abu Dhabi being there for monetary reasons. And we have no idea how well Vietnam's going to do. That could be an absolute flop. Ben also, in a previous video that we've done, mentioned that to be a world champion, you should have a circuit in Africa, and we currently don't have one of those either. And there are ways of having that done. South Africa does have a pretty great circuit. There's not too many tracks in South America. Of course, we're used to racing Argentina an awful lot as well. So I do think Imola should come back eventually. I don't think it will anytime soon, but eventually I'd love to see it. But I do think there are other tracks that maybe should reappear on the calendar before Imola gets its say. The one I would have to pick, now I have mentioned that obviously the Nürburgring was probably going to be one of them. There are many great tracks that we've been at, Jerez being another one that's fantastic, but maybe again too slim for the current cars. I think the one that suits current racing, if it had to appear on the 2020 calendar, would probably, as you mentioned earlier, John, was Turkey. I think Istanbul is such a fantastic track. The dynamics of that track, the infamous long turn 8, it's got 2 great straights to it that you can overtake on, some really fast-paced corners, and then a really intricate final sector. I genuinely think that Istanbul, if it was even going for 1 year, with the aerodynamics that we have at the moment, could provide some really fun, interesting racing. So, yes, I'm going to limit it to 1. I can mention so many more. But yeah, for me, Turkey is probably the one that suits the cars the best, that will create a fun and interesting race.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty good. That like for me personally as well, like, I don't really know Imola that well. I think his last race was all the way back in 2006. I think that was his last Grand Prix. And I was pretty much a fan. Till, well, I started being a proper fan till about 2010. So really, I kind of missed those good eras of Imola. To be fair, as I said, I don't really know that much about the circuit. I think people just want it back for nostalgia reasons as well, which kind of it's a bit of like where does F1 fans want to go? Do you want to go to newer circuits, just as like you guys say, like to promote Formula One in other countries where you might not necessarily think Formula One might be popular? They're like, oh, I don't want a new Grand Prix. Oh, Vietnam, I'm not too sure about that. Or Azerbaijan, or complaining, and then going, right, okay, I want the classic tracks. But then, I mean, like, I imagine a lot of people won't be impressed that Imola is linked with the return. And it's like, oh no, not Imola. Oh no, that's too narrow. I mean, Zandvoort as well. When that was announced, everyone was like, oh no, it's too narrow. The cars won't be able to fit. It's just going to be like Monaco, but in a different country. And you're like, you can't win, can you? It's you just cannot win. I tell you what, let's just go to one circuit all the way around. Well, for me, in terms of tracks to come back, like I said, I've only really been a fan since 2010. I remember the Turkish Grand Prix slightly, but I wasn't really into it that much to where I was analysing how good the racing was. But for me, the track that I always looked forward to and coming to, and how unpredictable it could be in terms of the weather, would be Malaysia. Now, I know a lot of people might listen to this and go, oh, like, we've just been there and you could have thought of a better track than that. But for me, like, Malaysia was such a good racing track that we had so many good races there. And one thing that I love in Formula One is the change of weather, how unpredictable it can be. How 1 minute it can be blue skies, sunny, the next minute it's absolutely, chucking it down with rain. Spa, very, very similar. I mean, Spa is one of my favourite circuits on the calendar. I love it because it provides, some good racing. It's got a lot of history, and of course, the sudden change in weather. Malaysia is the exact same thing. It's a very wide circuit. I think the main straight's like 20 meters wide across, so it will be able to fit the cars perfectly. Got some good, left-handers, right-handers. I mean, that long chicane as well. I love that. And again, like, those long straights. And if you think back to the likes of Azerbaijan, when you're seeing all them cars, how close they are on the straight, how competitive it can be, especially in this modern day, I think F1 cars could suit that track really, really well. And maybe in 2021 it could suit them even better. Who knows? But for me, certainly would definitely be Malaysia. I think it's a track that should come back into Formula One, but it's all about money, isn't it? About at the end of the day, if the track isn't coughing up enough money, it's not going to be on the calendar, unfortunately. But I think we've rambled enough today. I don't know about you guys, but I think we've spoken enough, haven't we? About Ferrari and of course about tracks as well. But of course, as ever, let us know your opinions in the comment section below about what we've spoke about today, about Ferrari, about Sebastian Vettel. What's your thoughts with Vettel at this point? There is a bit of like mixed reactions. Some are on Vettel's side, some aren't, and some are like on the fence. It's like I can see why he's good and why he's bad or whatever. And same question that I asked the guys there. What track do you want to see return to the Formula 1 calendar and why? You can only pick one. I won't accept two. Otherwise, you'll be banned. No, I'm only kidding. But I just want to say a huge thank you to the guys at Late Breaking as well, Ben and Sam, for coming on. Thank you very much as well. Just quickly as well, do you just want to explain to the guys who are watching, who haven't discovered your channel or podcast or anything, just want to quickly tell them what it's about, what do you guys talk about, and where you can find yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, you can find us on all of the relevant social media channels. Look at us on Twitter. We're at LBreaking, Late Breaking on Instagram as well, and our YouTube channel, obviously, Late Breaking too. Very much a similar thing to what you guys are doing on here. We create videos debating the biggest topics in Formula One, race reviews, race previews, debating anything that's relevant. it's fantasy scenarios to do with circuits, as we have described today. It's a real mixture, and we tend to upload somewhere between sort of 3 to 4 videos a week, and we want to keep producing the regular content for our fans. So yeah, I think, you know, if you're subscribed here, then I really hope you go over to us, have a look at seeing what we do, see if you enjoy it, and hopefully we'll see you over there.
Yeah, and vice versa. If any of our guys have popped over and that we're doing this and listened and enjoyed, Jordan creates some great content. So make sure you hit his sub button. We'll make sure, Jordan, that we put your channel in our next recent video as well, so they can come and check you out. And if you do like gaming, we don't do a lot of it, but we do run our own league as well. We have our own league that I shout a lot on. So that's something a little different we like to do as well. But yeah, like very similar channels. We all have a good laugh. We're all about loving F1. So, you know, share the love. Share the love.
Exactly. Yes, and of course, all their links to their channels and everything will be in the description below. I'll get my words out eventually. And of course, if you're new to our channel, then please subscribe as well. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. It seems like a million miles away for us, but we are nearly there. I mean, if we hit 1,000, wow! I don't know what I would do. But anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching as well. And once again, thank you very much for Liberating to taking time out of their busy schedule to be on here today. As like I said, go and check the channel out. No problem at all. Go and check the channel if you haven't already. And until the next time, guys, we'll see you later.